Hey guys, how do we keep it dirty? You guys can see it's raining. We're out here with the guys at Level Up Suspension to do some trail scouting. Now, we're not just doing any trail scouting. We're doing trail scouting for an upcoming race. Now, this video is not going to drop till after the race, but it's for the Vegas to Reno race. Basically hooking up with the group that actually puts together the map files. So these guys actually go in and create a better map file than the organizers do. That base map file can be provided to the race team. And then these guys, they're not associated with any of the race teams, and they also sell a map file, a very highly detailed map file with all the obstacles. Now, so you guys can see, we got a lot of rain. Of course, it's probably going to be pretty different from when we go through it. So we'll see, guys. Hopefully it's a fun experience. Hopefully it's not a muddy mess, and hopefully we don't get stuck. Hopefully. So we got the trucks all packed up, topped off at the original Eddie's Road there in Beatty, and we hit the road and immediately had to skip the first 20 miles of the trail. Beatty, California is just down the road from Death Valley. Despite its remoteness and its, they rarely ever get rain, they had all kinds of flooding and everything throughout the night and that day. So there was just too much water everywhere. And that night, Death Valley was closed after all that flood damage that they have because of the rainstorm before. We actually drove in that rainstorm and it was pretty nasty. The rain was so heavy that we couldn't see on the road. We had to put on our off-road lights and hoping that we didn't blind anybody. It was pretty bad. Now that storm was still dumping rain the next morning and there was standing water everywhere. That wash next to the road as we're driving was a river. So we were in for an adventure. Already we had a bit of change of plan. The rains haven't really stopped. They've been going all night. They've been going all morning. They've been pouring pretty hard for the area. I think like the first 40 miles or so of the course, we got to skipping ahead because chances are the race officials aren't going to do that first part. Because everywhere we look, where there was flat ground, it was nothing but sitting water. Dry lake beds were lakes, roads were just mud puddles. It's pretty bad. So we're gonna go scout ahead to see how bad it is, and hopefully the trail's passable. There's a couple of silty sections that are concerning to the team, so that's what we're gonna go check out. Wish us luck. So that right there is the race course. As you can see some of the off-road damage. Mine right there, which is kind of cool. There's a lake over here. That don't look shallow. That looks deep out there. There's a lot of water. And race course is supposed to go through that, right at the edge there. Yeah, they're not going through that. Now, this was supposed to be the first pits for the race course, but the trails before were either washed away or they were underwater in the lake beds. And yeah, that stuff is toxic. Despite all the heavy rain, trails started off great. For the most part, trails were relatively dry. We didn't see much mud for the first few miles. Then the mud puddles started showing up. Mostly tame stuff though, nothing major. We were able to drive through most of that in two-wheel drive. And honestly, I was having a lot of fun checking out the scenery because it looked beautiful out there. The views were epic. But then the ground started to change a little bit. We started to get into this soft clay material that initially it looked hard, but when you drove over it, it immediately felt soft and the truck sank into it. And because of that, the trucks were flinging mud anywhere. My front wheels, because the front end is so wide, was just flinging mud 20, 30 feet up in the air in front of us. And then we were going just the right speed that it was just crashing right back on the windshield and the back of the truck and all that stuff. It was crazy the amount of mud that we were flinging. Eventually, we did finally get past all that. It wasn't too bad. And we did a quick pit stop just to take a look at the trucks because there was quite a bit of mud. Gen 2 truck with stock fenders compared to my truck with the mid-trail and everything was a big difference. That Gen 2 truck was basically clean. Now, here's where things took a turn for the worse.
It gets a little bit soft afterwards.
Basically, this trail the trails just turned into a bog. We ended up trying to run on the high side to try to stay out as much of the water as we could, but after a point, it didn't matter which side we were on. There was just mud everywhere.
Black stuff here, it gets kind of squishy in the middle.
Even with four-wheel drive, we were kind of struggling going through this section, so imagine trying to do this in a two-wheel drive pre-runner.
back there. If you can't respond, don't worry.
The trail started to get worse and worse the further we got into it, but we made it okay until we got to this section. That was gnarly. In front of us lied what used to be a lake bed, now a lake. We had no clue how big it is. It was still raining at the point, and we had to figure out a way, or if there was going to be a way around it. So originally Mike wanted to take us to the south side of it, but after looking at Google Earth through my lead nav app, I realized that the south side just connects to another section of the lake, so we might be better off going on the north side. It looked like there was a narrow bridge there. Not gonna lie, I was nervous here. I had the heavier truck, but at the same token, I had all the gear. So if their lighter truck had issues, I had to be ready to rescue them. Good thing is that narrow bridge was pretty solid. They made it across okay, but it was my turn now.
Not bad, pretty slippery, like a lot of sticks that could maybe do a puncture, but they're pretty soft right now. Just be careful like the back sides of the bushes, but I stayed in the bushes pretty much the whole time.
Copy that. I'm gonna try to follow your tracks.
To one side or the other of the track because the surface is broken.
Now that right there is some great advice for you guys when you're rolling over unknown muddy terrain. Don't roll over somebody else's tracks when the ground has already been broken. If the ground's really soft and it's already been compromised by another vehicle, stagger it a little bit. Offset your wheels a little bit on either side so that you're running on still solid ground. Luckily the ground was hard enough to support us, but I've been in situations before where I thought the ground was solid and it wasn't, and I got my big truck stuck. That wasn't so bad. I think that mud hole we went through earlier was worse. So Mike, how was that section?
That was interesting. We basically had to go around two lakes that may or may not have joined in the middle. We weren't really sure until we got there.
Yeah, that was nasty. That was nasty. And my truck is just so much more dirtier than yours. I mean, like, what the fuck? That's the drawback of a wide stance. Look at that shit. Right now, we're just kind of assessing, are we going to keep going? Because it is pretty shit. It's pretty shit.
It's pretty bad.
Once we got on the other side, the rain did stop, and it wasn't until I actually got the drone up in the air that we realized how big this dry lake area was, and then how big of a mistake it would have been if we went to the south. Imagine if we would have gone to the south side. I mean, it would have been 4 times as long, and there were so many more wet patches and just way softer areas on the other side. And come to realize now that we have the drone up in the air, we were in the middle of a giant wash. I mean, this whole area was a wash. That trail we took, that we passed through, that was a little challenging, that was all part of this massive wash out there, and it was just full of water. Now the question became, should we keep going? Already within the first 40 miles, we had 2 major sections of the race course that were completely impassable, and they're not going to be dry in time for the race the following week. It was still raining, and there was rainstorms in the forecast. This was the weekend before. There was a few rainstorms coming in the forecast the next week. And looking through the map, there was multiple sections that had washes and lake beds, or leading up to lake beds, that were going to be underwater. You know, there was 400 miles left of the course we still had to go through. So at this point, I decided to go ahead and report back to the race officials, let them know what we've seen, and we were going to go take a break and go get some lunch at Tonopah. So initially we went through and drove by Goldfield first to check out the car art. And then at Tonopah to get some lunch. It was there that we finally called it. Course map was going to change. They would have to get approval from BLM in order to pick new routes. So we weren't going to have a new race course right there. And depending on the rain and everything else, we may not even have a clear path going forward, right? So they called it, and we decided, okay, it's not worth risking the trucks and going out there and trying to scout the trails that may not even be used by the race. So we went to a local coin-up and started to rinse off as much of the mud off the trucks as we could. Now this part sucked for me. I was looking forward to checking out new areas. I haven't been to that section of Nevada, so I was hoping to check out the new trails, maybe get some new ideas for future runs. So it sucked having to turn around and go home. Not only that, it was beautiful out there, right? I mean, you guys saw the shots. It was beautiful out there. I mean, the rain, that area just wakes up. It's gorgeous everywhere. There's so much to explore out there, right? I would love to go check out Goldfield and see some of the abandoned mines there, if there's any. See what's around Tonopah. There's so much to see out there. But, you know, the rain does put a damper on things, right? Most areas are closed. You don't want to go exploring by yourself because if you get stuck, you're screwed. You got to get yourself out. I mean, we weren't expecting this much rain. I didn't even bring my recovery boards or anything like that because we were not expecting this much rain. So I wasn't ready to run solo. So I went ahead and stopped somewhere, aired back up, and started to head home. Oh, that's gross. Oh, everywhere. But even on our drive home, we were still seeing rain the whole way back. We saw little microcells as we were driving on the highway. So to drive home, it was just nothing but rain all the way until we got to Beatty. This area of the desert in Nevada and California doesn't see much rain. I mean, the amount of rain they got here in 2 days is how much they get in a few years. It was a substantial amount of rain, and that's why there was so much damage everywhere, especially in Death Valley. If you guys by now haven't seen all the damage that happened in Death Valley, I mean, complete sections of the road just gone because of the amount of water they got. The weird part is, though, is we've had such weird weather around here that, I mean, as soon as we crossed into Cali, the weather started warming up. The temps quickly started shooting back up, and before you know it, we went from the 60s in Beatty and Nevada to all of a sudden we're back in California, clear skies, and in the 90s. Totally random. And back where I lived, it was 110 this whole time that it was raining up in Death Valley and in the desert. We also confirmed that all the checkpoints on the way down were closed. We did see the Caltrans guy closing them up on the way up, but on the way back, some roads were completely closed and some other roads had checkpoints on there where only high clearance vehicles with four-wheel drive were being allowed through. So unfortunately, that's not the way we wanted to end. So what ended up happening, guys, is the most of the trail ended up being impassable. Most of the trails were underwater. There's a lot of washes that are now rivers, dry lake beds that are now lakes. A substantial amount of water that's in that whole area, and it's a proper desert out there. There shouldn't be any fucking rain out there. It's disappointing, but basically what's going to happen, guys, is that all the maps and planning that they put together are invalid now because the course has to change. Trophy trucks and UTVs and all those can't go through those areas, so they need to find a different route. And they're going to find a different route. Problem is that in order to do that, they need to get permission from BLM, and BLM is never quick. So unfortunately, they won't be able to finish scanning the trails this weekend, which means they can't finish their map files and all that stuff. We're already on our way back. We're almost at Baker, so you guys can see quite a bit different than all the rain and everything that we've had the last couple of days. It's already 90 degrees. It's hot. It's not even muggy. There's no moisture, even though it did rain in this area. We had a blast. I hope we actually get a chance to do a whole scouting with them next time. I think that'll be fun to launch the new trails. Now, despite all the mud and all that stuff, I actually did have a blast. I always enjoy going to new places, and it was fun hanging out with these guys. And so I'm hoping that they invite us to come back and do it again. Right? I'd love to help them out on the next scouting run. But we did find some areas that we got to address on the truck. So first thing, our headlights. Our headlights were awful. When it was raining on the drive up at night, we couldn't see anything. I had to rely heavily on my Baja Design lights, and if I saw anybody, I had to turn them off, right? So I don't blind them. So we definitely got to take care of our headlights. And they also became a problem on the drive home. In Barstow, there was a tire on the road, and we couldn't see it until it was too late. We hit that thing hard. Luckily, only the wheel got chipped, and that was it. No damage to the truck, but it's something else we got to add to the list of things to address on the truck. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Thanks a lot for watching. Questions, comments below. Please consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys on the next one.